Ever wondered how gruesome and brutal historical punishments could be? The annals of human history, while filled with tales of great achievements and progress, also hide within their pages darker stories of pain, suffering, and unimaginable punishments. It's a chilling reminder of the depths of cruelty that humanity can sink to when we look back at the punishments meted out in the past. These punishments, terrifyingly creative and undoubtedly brutal, were not merely tools of retribution. They served as stark warnings, designed to maintain order and discourage disobedience. From the ancient lands of Greece to the far reaches of the Asian continent, societies have employed a wide range of punishments, each more horrifying than the last. These cruel methods were not only a testament to the society's thirst for justice, but also a reflection of the times and their perceptions of law and order. So, brace yourselves, as we are about to dive into the dark abyss of history and explore some of the most chilling punishments ever recorded. Starting off our list is the infamous crucifixion. This method of execution dates back to ancient times, with the Romans using it as a powerful tool of deterrence. The process involved nailing or tying the condemned to a large wooden cross, left to suffer for days in view of onlookers. The length of suffering was excruciating, often resulting in death from exposure, dehydration, or asphyxiation. Crucifixion, a slow and painful death, was a clear message to the masses about the consequences of defying the law. Next on our list, a method that used a small creature to inflict a large amount of terror, the use of rats. Throughout history, these creatures have been used as a terrifying instrument of torture and execution. Subjects were immobilized, while a heated container full of hungry rats was placed on their bodies. The heat would force the rats to gnaw through the victim. It wasn't just about the physical pain, but the sheer psychological terror. This grotesque method of execution was not only about physical pain, but also psychological torture. Moving on to two terrifying methods, the brazen bull and flaying. The brazen bull, a chilling invention from ancient Greece, was a hollow bronze sculpture of a bull. Unfortunate souls were placed inside, and a fire lit beneath. The metal would heat up, essentially roasting the person alive. The screams would echo through the bull's intricate piping, sounding like the bellowing of an enraged bull to those outside. Then, there's flaying. This is the removal of skin from the body, often while the person is still alive. Used by many societies, including the Assyrians and the Aztecs, it was a punishment reserved for the most serious of crimes. The brutality of this method served as a deterrent, instilling fear and maintaining control within these societies. These punishments were not just about death, but about making death a spectacle of horror. They were reminders of the power the ruling classes held over life and death, and the lengths they would go to maintain it. The breaking wheel and impalement, two punishments that ensured a slow, painful death. Both were used as public displays of power, designed to instill fear and obedience in the populace. The breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel, was a form of capital punishment that dates back to the Middle Ages. The condemned were lashed to a large wheel, their limbs broken in several places, and then left to die a slow, agonizing death. This method was prevalent in Europe, a chilling testament to the brutal justice of the era. On the other hand, impalement was a method of execution often associated with Vlad the Impaler, the infamous ruler of Wallachia in the 15th century. The victim was forced onto a sharp, large stake, which was then raised upright. The stake's positioning ensured that death would not come quickly, but rather over hours or even days. Both methods were designed to prolong suffering and to serve as a warning to others. Next, we move on to two punishments that utilized animals in the most horrifying ways. The first method was being crushed under an elephant, a practice carried out in several Asian societies. This punishment was not only brutal, but also a demonstration of power, showing that the ruler could control such a massive and powerful creature. The psychological impact of this spectacle was immense, instilling fear and obedience in the populace. The second method was a horrific death inflicted by wild animals. This form of execution was used by several ancient civilizations, including the Romans. The condemned was left at the mercy of fierce beasts, often in public arenas. The terror and helplessness experienced by the victim served as a chilling deterrent to those who dared defy the laws. These punishments demonstrate the lengths societies would go to instill fear and maintain control. The use of animals not only capitalized on their physical power but also exploited the deep-seated human fear of these untamed creatures. Our journey continues with two more terrifying methods, being sawed in half and punished by the rack. The prospect of being sawed in half is enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Historically, this punishment was reserved for the most heinous of criminals. The convict would be hung upside down, and the process would begin at the groin, moving downward. The upside-down position was designed to keep the blood rushing to the head to ensure consciousness for as long as possible, magnifying the agony. Next, we have the rack, an infamous device used extensively during the Middle Ages. The victim would be tied by their ankles and wrists, and then slowly stretched out. This brutal process would dislocate joints and cause unbearable pain. It was a tool of interrogation, meant to extract confessions under the duress of unimaginable suffering. These punishments were not only physically excruciating but also public displays of power. Death by boiling and cropping of ears, two punishments that were as brutal as they were bizarre. Let's start with death by boiling, a method of execution used in differing times and places, but perhaps most notably in 16th century England. This was a fate reserved for those who committed high treason or poisonings. The condemned would be submerged in a large cauldron of boiling liquid, often water or oil, resulting in a painful and horrifying death. Now, let's shift our focus to the cropping of ears. This was a common punishment in various societies such as 17th century England and America, particularly for crimes of perjury or seditious libel. The offender would have their ears cut off, often in public, to serve as a visual deterrent for others. Both of these punishments were not just about retribution, they were also about deterrence, about sending a powerful message to society. Such extreme punishments were a clear demonstration of the severity of the crimes committed. Finally, we arrive at one of the most infamous punishments in history, burning at the stake. This chilling method of execution was widely used in the Middle Ages, often associated with witch trials and heresy. However, its roots stretch further back, as far as ancient Babylon. In societies like medieval Europe, a person condemned to this punishment would be tied to a large wooden stake surrounded by a pyre. The fire would then be lit, and the crowd would watch as the condemned person was consumed by the flames. The intent was not only to execute, but also to purify and serve as a stark warning to others. The impact was profound. This method of execution was not just about punishment, it was a tool of control, a spectacle designed to instill fear and obedience in the populace. It was a clear message: step out of line, and you could be next. Burning at the stake was not just an execution method, but a public spectacle designed to instill fear. We've journeyed through a dark chapter of history, exploring some of the most chilling punishments ever used. The brutal methods we've discussed, from the gruesome crucifixion to the horrifying use of rats, have indeed sent shivers down our spines. These gruesome punishments and others like the brazen bull, flaying and the breaking wheel were not merely acts of violence but tools of control, designed to instill fear and obedience. We've delved into the terror of impalement and the bone-crushing horror of being crushed under an elephant, both gruesome punishments intended to create a spectacle of suffering. The dread-inducing punishments of being raped by a wild animal to death and being sawed in half were used as tools of public humiliation and deterrence. We further explored the agonizing death by boiling, the disfigurement through cropping of ears, and the terrifying punishment by the rack, all stark reminders of the lengths to which societies have gone to enforce their laws and norms. And finally, we discussed the chilling spectacle of burning at the stake, a punishment that combined both physical torment and the psychological trauma of public humiliation. These punishments, though brutal and horrific, were reflections of their times. They were born out of societies that believed in harsh retribution and public spectacle as a means of maintaining order. But as we've progressed, our approach to punishment has evolved. Today, the emphasis is more on rehabilitation than retribution, on understanding the causes of crime rather than simply punishing the act. This shift reflects a broader change in our societal values. We've come to understand that brutality breeds brutality, that violence begets violence. We've learned to value empathy and understanding, to recognize that every individual, even those who err, deserves dignity and respect. While these punishments may be a thing of the past, they serve as a chilling reminder of the lengths humanity can go in the name of justice and control. As we move forward, Let's remember these lessons from history and strive to build societies that are just, compassionate, and humane.